you're talking about me as a marketer. You know how many thousands of ads that were just terrible that I wasted money on, but I learned from those ads, and so now I have 10,000 ads that were actually great, and because these 10,000 ads are more loud than the 1,000 ads, more people focus on, what was great than what was actually, bad. So if you can just leverage what you can learn, then failures are great, like rejoice in them.
Yo, what is up? It's Adam Carending back with another episode of Novelty Voice here at 120 Collective. I'm sitting here with a good friend, Jeremy Miller. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing pretty well. How you doing, man?
Good. I appreciate you coming and sitting down with me and having this conversation.
I love indie, man, so thanks for having me out here.
Definitely. Real quick, just want to give a brief background. So Novelty Voice, it's a platform for creative entrepreneurs and young professionals to be heard. Our goal is to interview really awesome up-and-coming movers and doers here in the city, get to know them on more of a personal level, uncovering their journey, their mindset, their vision for what they're doing.
Nice.
So, I mean, without further ado, I'm Jeremy Miller. You're 20 years old?
Yes.
Dude, this guy is 20 years old. He's an entrepreneur, a business owner, digital marketer, featured in Forbes, Inc. magazine, 50-plus publications, all at the age of 20, which is extremely impressive.
I don't often get complimented like that, so I appreciate that.
For sure. No, dude, it's impressive. I mean, I'm 23, and just seeing what you're doing, and obviously I kind of have more of a background than our listeners maybe, than your story and what you've done in the past, but it really is inspiring. So I'm excited to kind of get more of your story and share with the listeners what you have going on.
Yeah. So you want me just gonna dive into it, or?
Yeah, I'll ask you first.
Cool.
So where are you from? Let's get some brief background of you first.
Born and raised in Greenwood, Indiana.
Okay.
Yep.
Sweet. What high school did you go to?
Greenwood Christian Academy. So I originally went to Center Grove, but then I switched over in 5th grade. I went to a private school, wanted to change things up.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm from Greenwood as well. I didn't know
Cool.
you were actually Wait, you're living in Indianapolis though, correct?
No, I live in Broad Ripple now, but I lived in
Gotcha.
Greenwood, Indiana pretty much all my life.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, sweet. And then so how many siblings do you have?
So I have an older brother who I live with. He's 23, I think. His name is Jake. He's a tech ops engineer at a company called Kinney Group. They're
Okay.
a pretty cool company on the west side, I believe. And I have a younger sister who she's freaking awesome. She's 17. Her name's Jessica. And she's going to be like a legitimate public speaker. Like just,
Oh, wow.
she can just ravel a crowd. Like she is just very inspiring, very passionate. She's just a very empathetic person, and people just love to hear her speak. So, yeah, my brother and sisters are pretty awesome.
Sweet, you got the whole JJJ.
Yeah,
name
and
thing.
my mom, her name's Jill.
Okay.
And my dad, his name's Doug, so we call him Jug.
That's actually funny.
That's been like an ongoing family joke for like years, like probably a decade.
That's funny. And so I guess growing up, what were your hobbies?
Honestly, like did so many different things. My parents used to make like, not fun of me, but like they joked how I was like constantly having just so many different hobbies. Like they're like, just pick one, and I just like to try so many different things. I mean, everything from Legos to longboarding, skateboarding to skiing, snowboarding, whether it was sports or I love when I was super young, like kind of elementary, middle school. It was like science kits all the time. Like that's all I wanted for my Christmas and birthday. I just wanted a unique science kit that was just kind of different. And then as I kind of grew up, it was videos, social media, content creation, that kind of stuff. And now, my hobbies are my skill sets. Except I'd say video games, esports. That's something that I am just passionate about, that industry, and I'm kind of working in it in some ways, and that's kind of a hobby right now that I really enjoy.
Okay. So what would you say your skill sets are?
How would you define skill sets?
So things that you personally think that you're really good at that you can add value to other people with.
Yeah, it's a great question. So marketing in general, and so my approach to marketing is very fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
So it's when I would build a campaign, or before I would even start running ads, or to build in kind of awareness for anything, before I had to market anything, I kind of look at it from the consumer standpoint, and I think about the psychology of things. So the way I view marketing and just how I focus on it from a customer centric standpoint, kind of makes my approach to marketing. So it's not necessarily some unique skill. It's just kind of my mindset with marketing and how I market things.
Gotcha. And so did you go to college?
No, I most of my education is through self-learning or mentors, watching what other people are doing right, watching what other people do wrong. But ultimately, like, there's a quote that, when I was on Forbes that they kind of kept. It was, don't be a student of the classroom, be a student of the world. And like, I believe every single person in this world that you meet, you can learn something super valuable that can either be valuable to you right now or like years down the road. And like, you can't quantify it right now, but like when it happens, you're going to be happy about it, right?
Yeah.
And so just approaching life, where like, how can I learn something? How can I meet someone new? How can I teach someone something? And when I just kind of approach life like that, it just kind of opens up doors of opportunity.
I love that. And so after high school, what was that thing that you did? Obviously, you didn't go to college. So what did you do?
When I was graduating high school, which was May 20th at 3:46 p.m., I literally, best day of my life. Hated high school, unfortunately. I had great teachers who helped me get through, but I just had very bad grades. But what I was doing was my advertising agency and Facebook advertising only. And because that was what I was best at, and at the time I'd recently made the transition to focus on what I was best at, I was making decent money, So I just bought the car, and I just, going to college wasn't something that I was thinking about because I just knew how expensive it was. I just want to spend money on, traveling. I just want to go see the world, And so I just spent the whole summer, really next 6 months after I graduated high school, just traveling. Doing Facebook advertising for clients because it's on my laptop and my phone, but I just spend a lot of money just traveling.
Where was the best place that you went during that time?
Best place, my first set of traveling was all U.S. I just kind of wanted to cover U.S. My favorite trip that I did was sponsored by Subaru, actually. So all of our expenses were covered, and it was 6,300 miles all around the U.S. So like. What? 60 hours of driving, and I did like 90% of it because like the car was like brand new. That's how we got the sponsorship. I kind of leveraged, which that's a different story which we can share. But it was a brand new car, and I didn't want anyone to drive the car, so I drove like the whole trip. So it was very tiring, but just seeing the country, just like going to the West Coast and then to the East Coast and back to the East Coast, seeing the country in just that perspective. And we went like the low route, and then we went to high route. It was just so cool. I have so much respect for the U.S. Like, the whole world is like, England, those different places are beautiful, but there's some really cool places in the U.S. if you just get out and explore. Like, if you just kind of think a little creatively, like, oh, what's over there? What's down that? What's over here in this state park? And it was just a very adventurous trip. We didn't have much planned. It was cool.
So was that with just a bunch of friends?
Yeah.
Okay. That's super awesome. How did you pull off this sponsorship?
Yeah, so the car that I have is a Subaru Impreza, Island Blue Subaru Impreza. And I've always been a fan of Subaru, which is another story, but ever since I was a kid, I've always been a fan of Subaru. So I follow them on social media, and I've just noticed how this one car that I wanted for a long time, I never saw it on their social media. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, it's a beautiful car, and so I was just so confused on why they would not have content on this car that I'm buying. And I also knew that brands love quality user-generated content, and they love it when it's free as well, and then when it's like no hassle, and when they're dealing with someone who's not going to waste their time. And so I called like a local Subaru customer service department, and I said, I'd like to be in touch with your corporate Subaru headquarters. I have a media partnership opportunity that I'd like to offer. Who should I talk to? And they're like, oh, well, you need to talk to this person. And then I talked to that person. They said, oh, you need to talk to the media department. So I think I was connected to like the social media department, shared a little about who I was. We had this car that we wanted to create all this content for, make a bunch of free videos, give to them for free. We just wanted the expenses to be covered, and that's just what we want to do. We're just a bunch of videographers who just want to explore the country. They forwarded us to the partnerships department, and that's kind of where we figured out the details. What are they going to do with the content? How are we going to get it to them? What kind of video are we going to make? Are we going to make a video? Figured out all the details. And then once we figured out all the details, and I didn't really, waste their time. I wasn't greedy. I didn't try to ask for extra money. It was pretty easy to work with. That was the first big partnership that I ever did. So, but it ended up being pretty easy.
That's awesome. And so you started this, digital marketing agency in high school, then, right?
Yeah, because I started the skateboard company early high school, like freshman,
Okay.
and I closed it like around sophomore year. I started a social media marketing agency where I was doing what we talked about earlier, where I was
Mm-hmm.
like, let me just manage social media clients for all social media for so many people, burnt out, and that's when my mentor was like, just focus on focus on Facebook ads, man. Just like focus on one thing, and if you're great at that, then maybe you can expand. But you got to make sure you're actually great at this like one small thing.
I like that. And so, okay, for our listeners, they know a little bit of background of you. This kid who's in high school, who's starting a business and now agency, and all this stuff. And you're only 20 years old. If you don't mind, I have you shared your story last time we met with me, and dude, it was extremely inspiring. So if you don't mind, just kind of diving into your story and your perspective of everything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when I was young, and this is about to get dark, I was sexually abused for a couple years, and when you're young, your brain is in a very pivotal cognitive development period. Like it's constantly changing. It's in a rapid state, and so like effects can be much more weighted at a younger age, if you will. Things that can affect you, and so of course that really affected me negatively from a psychological standpoint. And so just through elementary school and middle school, I just was confused on life. I, wasn't really happy, kind of wasn't really happy with the world. I was curious. Like I was always like, one of the reasons why I was constantly exploring many different things, like I mentioned earlier, is because I was just constantly trying to find something new that could get me excited or get me happy or something that I could just put my hands and be busy with, that could help me forget about, whatever is lingering in my head. And so like eighth grade, like early, maybe even early high school, I had one therapist, and she approached psychology not from hey kid, here's a pill, and it's a magic pill, because most of the therapists and counselors that I had, it just wasn't anything that actually got to the root problem, and the root problem that I believe, and the root problem was just like it was a chemical imbalance in my brain. And just she understood the psychology of the brain and how our brain is made up of chemicals and hormones, and our brain is very it's driven by if-then sequences. It's very algorithmic. It's all based on patterns, and if you can learn these patterns and these behaviors of the brain, you can start to learn that humans, we can actually trigger emotions, we can trigger thoughts, like we can actually have a lot more control of our brain than we might think of. Like when you think about people like Seth Godin, Tony Robbins, people who are just on like another level, like their brain is like not on Earth, like they're in freaking like crazy, like they're just so smart. That's just how developed their mindset is. And so that was just kind of our focus. And so we learned about a hormone or chemical called serotonin. A lot of people are familiar with it. This chemical regulates your mood and your anxiety. A lack of this chemical, a lot of people theorize, there's not a lot of science and data that says whether it's true or not, but I believe, and a lot of people believe, that a lack of this chemical, when your brain doesn't produce this chemical, that's when you become depressed. I also believe, and a lot of people also believe, they theorize that you can trigger this chemical by literally doing something else for someone, like by serving other people. So like, when you held the door open for me when you came in, and I had a smile, and I was like, oh, dude, I appreciate it, because I was cold inside, and you like felt good. You were letting me inside this warm room, and you're gesturing me in. You felt good inside because serotonin was being released in your brain, like by you literally doing something for someone else. And so at that point, once we kind of looked at depression, looked at me from that standpoint, the conversation wasn't what pill do we take. It wasn't what religious practice do we take. It's like, Jeremy, you're going to go to a nonprofit and you're going to serve. You're going to go to a shelter and you're going to go serve. You're going to start serving at your church every church Sunday at 6 a.m. for an entire year. And it's going to suck. It's going to be terrible. And that's what I did. But like, and in the beginning, it was awful. I hated it. But towards like the mid of after I started getting into this rhythm of serving people and talking to people and seeing like this impact that I was having, whether it was handing someone an article of clothing, or just just talking to someone, just being there for someone, when that person was in a much worse state than I was, and by just me kind of talking with them made them happier, it gave me significance. And it's hard to be depressed when you feel significant.
Yeah.
And so that was the real high, because like, I was testing drugs, like I was testing just different things that the world could offer at the time, but like feeling significant, I promise you, is better than any type of strain of weed or whatever. It's like when you feel that you have purpose. And so like when I could see that I could like impact someone, like help someone, I was like, wow, like that's exciting. And that's sustaining too. Like it's not just like another hobby, or it's not just another joke that's short term. It's not temporary, because serving people, it's a very fundamental thing that a lot of humans don't do. And it's something that our chemical nature, whatever you believe, I believe that our bodies are just, it just desires us to serve more. That's a whole nother conversation another time. But so that was my focus. And so business, entrepreneurship, to back up, after I kind of learned that serving was something I was going to do, then I was like, once I know that I want to serve people, then what am I going to do with that, right? Because like, how do you, like, what am I going to serve? Like, am I going to volunteer all my life? Because that's definitely not what I want to do, because I'm ambitious. I want to, achieve cool things. I want to travel. I want a cool car, And so by looking at the people in my life who were serving people, who were happy, who had a happy family, who were, they're involved in their community, a lot of them were entrepreneurs. And so when I saw that, I was like, well, head on. I've seen a trend here. Like, what's this business thing? Because like I used to just think it was just products and profit and money. I didn't realize there's something actually, behind the surface. And so after studying entrepreneurship, just literally on Google, or just asking people, asking my dad, asking, uncles, whatever, what is entrepreneurship? What does that mean to you? Like, what are the fundamental components of entrepreneurship? It's serving people. You're solving problems. You're creating convenience in the marketplace. You're making other people's lives better. That's why they're giving you their credit card information. So I was like, boom, that's it. So the skateboard company was a therapeutic experience. It was just an opportunity for me to honestly overcome my own depression. And through that experience, I learned that business was truly my passion, and I had some skills in it, specifically social media. So when I closed my skateboard agency, or my skateboard company, because I couldn't grow it well, we just weren't profiting. When I closed it, I needed to focus, which was also advice from a mentor of mine. And so that's when I just focused on marketing, and that's kind of where I got to where I am now, just continually doubling down, focusing on just what I'm best at.
Dude, that's awesome. And so with your first company, the skateboard, it was Longboards, right? Mm-hmm. So with the longboard company,
longboards and skateboards.
Okay, longboards and skateboards. With that company, when you kind of shut that down, was that a hard transition? Because,
absolutely.
Yeah, I know that that was probably your baby. It was like that first company. You thought you were gonna take it to the millions, and then it doesn't work out. What was that transition like? And did that put you back into a place where you're like, well, shit, like now what?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did kind of skim over that. So the company was called Void Longboards. And I want to explain that name. So before I had, so one of the main things that helped me, overcome depression, it wasn't just business. It was, I found Christ. I found a savior that, someone that I believed in, right? Someone that I felt could speak to me, could save me, right? And so through that process, through that transition, was around that time when the agency was closed, or when I had to close the agency. And I had thought that was going to be a scar, this big public visible scar for the rest of my life. Like, I pictured it, it was going to be on my LinkedIn, Jeremy failed a company. This is how much money he lost. By the way, don't forget it. And it's interesting that I just want to share that now, even like 6 months, 8 months, a year afterwards, when I would share that story, like the people that were inspired by that story, that is so worth starting a company and losing $8,000. Just being able to like help people understand that it's okay to fail, because like I did it and I'm proud of it, because like I learned a lot of good shit. So if you fail and you learn things, own it, because like every successful person, if they tell you that they haven't failed, they are lying to you. Because failures are a precursor to success, right? Because you just can't like teach success, because the world's moving so quickly. Like you just can't teach it. So you got to teach people how to learn on their own. And once you can learn how to overcome failure, once you can learn how to adapt, once you can learn how to iterate, you're starting to talk about marketing. You're starting to talk about campaigns. You're talking about me as a marketer. You know how many thousands of ads that were just terrible that I wasted money on, but I learned from those ads, and so now I have 10,000 ads that were actually great, and because these 10,000 ads are more loud than the 1,000 ads, more people focus on, what was great than what was actually, bad. So if you can just leverage what you can learn, then failures are great, like rejoice in them. Like I have I don't know if the camera can see it, but I have a tattoo of "Keep Moving Forward" on my arm in the Disney font. And there's a movie that a lot of you guys might remember, but when you were a kid, you might have watched it, but Meet the Robinsons. Yep. And one of my favorite movies of all time, But in the movie, there's a scene where he fails an invention, and they literally throw a party because he failed something. And it's like it was just this rejoicing, just this completely different perspective on how they viewed failure. And I was like, that's really cool. And so, just mindset's really important. So when you talk about that transition, I had a lot of mentors help me develop a mindset to get me through that. It wasn't, grit. It wasn't, it wasn't that. It was just mentors helped me develop a mindset to help me understand that it's okay. It's great. It's part of the process.
How did you find these mentors?
So one of my first real mentors, his name was Kenton Yowie. And so my dad actually connected with him. So my dad was part of some business group. He started talking about me. And the guy was like, hey, I'd love to talk to your son. I'd like to talk to young people. And then after that, I leveraged shock factor. So when I'm networking with people, when I'm talking with people, I try to create shock factor. So for example, when I'm at a networking event or if I'm meeting new people, and if I'm with someone who knows me and my story, if I ever introduce myself, I'm like, hi, I'm Jeremy Miller, I'm a marketer. That's all I'll say. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, the person next to me, they're like, Jeremy, no, you talk yourself down. They're like, blah, 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 bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And the person's like, wow. And at that point, because like, I show that I was like humble because like I really don't give a shit about like genuinely, but because like they saw that I didn't share that thing, and like now they learned that I had some kind of skill or I had some kind of accomplishments, there was shock factors. Like now I was someone unique. And so then after, if I could talk with them and say to them, hey, I have a habit to connect with people or to learn from people who are smarter than me, could I just spend some time with you? Could I just you just share some, can I just learn something from you? And when you kind of approach them that way, when you can kind of create that shock factor, leverage your story, whatever it is, and then approach them from a very respectful manner where you're like, hey, I just like to be around people who are smarter than me. Successful people respect the heck out of that.
Yeah.
And especially if you're young. If you're young and wanting to be in entrepreneurship, leverage your youth because adults love young people who are responsible and who can like commit and like who just have like good people skills, and like those are very simple things. And so if you can just be a quality human, just commit to things, email on time, be on time, those basic things, it's very easy to get mentors because there's a lot of successful people who do want to give back and do want to mentor people.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love how you worded, I have a habit to be around successful people and learn from them. That's
important word.
That's very, that's just spot on, man, and that's a good perspective to have. What's your view on creating good habits, especially as an entrepreneur and, doing your own thing? I mean, I'm sure that you've probably put time into trying to formulate, you know, good habits and get rid of bad habits. What's the importance of those to you?
So this is something that my dad taught me. So credit to my dad. He's awesome.
Jug.
So he just, ever since I was a kid, he just always taught me just the word habit. And he taught me to create a habit, you need to do the same thing for 30 days straight.
Okay.
And so, and what that does is just that repeated cycle, it's that rhythm. Because again, your brain works in patterns, it works in rhythms, it works in cycles. So if you create those cycles, if like the whole serotonin thing, your brain was in a cycle of not producing that chemical. When you produce that chemical, you recreate a new cycle, right? And so with what I was explaining with what my dad was sharing with me with kind of explaining those different transitions, it gives you kind of a platform for you to kind of step back and kind of channel out, okay, if I'm going to actually develop a habit, something that I don't have to force myself to do, because like a habit, if we step back and ask ourselves, what is a habit? It's something that you just do, right? Yeah. It's not something where you have to put a reminder, like, okay, I gotta brush my teeth. Like, you brush your teeth every morning, and that's just something you do. Your subconscious brain just kind of takes control. That's a habit. And to create that habit, to create that subconscious brain where it's just kind of doing, where you just kind of remembering, just a lot of science just backs up doing it for 30 days straight helps you create that habit.
What habits have you purposely created in your life?
Like specifically around...
Do you have a morning routine? Do you read? Do you, these things?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely don't get on social media technology in the morning. Like I try to push that off as late as I can. I obviously I need to get the emails eventually, so it's not like 11 a.m. But like I try to push that back just because I know preserving my brain away from that screen and from those dopamine trips are just healthy. But yeah, I do try to read. So I read the Bible in the morning. I try to just sit back and just stay calm. I try to just don't do anything. Just sitting in just complete silence I definitely don't do it every day. I'm trying to develop that habit, right? But just every now and then, just sitting in silence for 5 minutes. In the beginning, it's hard. It feels like 25 minutes. But when you do that in the morning and just sit in silence and just think about your day, think about what you want, think about the people you interact with, I don't know, man. It just gives you clarity and just gives you peace.
Would that be your form of like meditation in a way, or do you actually
Sure.
sit